All right, we are back here on the podcast talking Yankee baseball with the man behind Bronx to Bushville. You've heard him on this podcast a couple times before. I think most recently talking about the winter meetings back in December. I feel like such a long time ago. Dan Federico is here. Dan, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Mike, what's going on, man? That winter meetings, yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago at this point.
I think going back to March when these teams are actually back playing spring training games in Florida just feels like a lifetime ago. I can't even imagine the winter meetings.
Yeah, no, it's been a crazy time. Let's just keep it at that.
Yeah, speaking of spring training, I mean, we were talking about the Yankees. Now they're having summer camp up here in the Bronx. What were some of the big storylines you remember from spring training right when the shutdown happened?
I mean, my biggest thing about the Yankees in spring training was, the continuation of these injury issues. I mean, going into the 2020 season, Aaron Judge was one of the biggest question marks. James Paxton had off-season back surgery. Giancarlo Stanton had a calf injury. Aaron Hicks with Tommy John surgery. So one of the themes that a lot of people have been talking about recently with the Yankees over the past couple of years has been these injuries. And during spring training, that seemed like the theme was going to continue. But this time, as we've seen, kind of bailed them out a little bit.
Yeah, it did. All four of those guys are back now. And as far as I'm aware, I think they're all on track for opening day, assuming that there's no coronavirus issues with them.
Yeah, so when you look at it, you've been hearing recently, Aaron Judge said he's completely healthy, which again, we had a feeling back in the day, back in March, that wasn't going to be the case. So that's great news for Yankees fans. I know Giancarlo Stanton, there's been questions about him possibly playing the outfield. I think he's going to stick with DH as of now. So that calf seems to still be a little bit of an issue, but having him in the batter's box, is always a difference maker, just being in the lineup. So that'll be huge for them. And Aaron Hicks and James Paxton both seem like they've overcome their surgery rehab and seems like they're ready to go as well when the season starts.
Yeah, I think having Paxton back is big, especially since we don't know when they'll see Tanaka, considering he's coming off concussion. We've seen with Clint Frazier, how crazy those recovery times can be. So, how big a concern is it right now that Tanaka gets hurt in the first, basically intra-squad game of the summer camp?
It's just, again, like we said before, the injury stuff. The injury bug just always seems to be biting the Yankees. As we know, this was a freak accident. You never like to see that. Everybody was kind of shaken up from the deal, and thank God Tanaka kind of walked away with just a mild concussion. But like you said, Clint Frazier dealt with a mild concussion. He was out for a long time. They're very tricky. There's no real remedy for it. It's just rest and hope he gets better. So, again, we don't know when he's going to come back. Hopefully for the Yankees' sake, it doesn't take that long, and it's just, as they say, it's mild, and hopefully the recovery time reflects that.
Yeah, and considering their rotation situation right now, I know they don't have Severino; he's out for the year. They have four. They basically look like a full rotation when Tanaka was healthy. Now he's not. Would you guess that they go opener more often for that fifth game?
I think opener right now, looking at their pool of players, I think that seems like the most logical, especially if they don't want to throw a prospect or a young pitcher into the fire right away, and that's something the Yankees, don't usually do regardless of how long the season is or what's going on. So I do think an opener will be an option. But one thing that, I haven't seen much talked about is that they could maybe, try and squeeze out going with the four-man rotation just because the amount of games, there aren't that many. I know there also isn't as many break times, but I could see that happening. But if I had to put my money on something, I think it would be them going with an opener for the short term just before they could get their ducks in order in terms of getting starting pitchers in a row.
Yeah, I would definitely think that makes some sense. I also am intrigued by looking at the initial player pool they had there, and they have, I feel like a ton of their prospects made the cut. And I know not all of them are being planned to play up here. And what are the guys that they brought up? What do you think when you saw this first list of, I think, 58 guys they had in the initial summer camp squad?
Yeah, so like you said, I mean, all eyes should be on the pitchers. There are a number of prospects there that fans have been hearing about for a long time, and that it seems like, they could very well get their shot this year. As we've seen Monday, Clark Schmidt, a lot of people have been praising him. I've done a lot of research on him, talked to a lot of people. There are a lot of high hopes within the organization about him being an impact pitcher as early as this year. And that was the case, before all the shutdown happened. Maybe, it would have taken him a while longer to get called up, and he would have had to go through AAA. It looks like he may forego that this year by just, making his way to the major leagues. But I think he's going to be somebody who makes a lot, maybe not, okay, I can't say a lot because there's 60 games, but he's going to make some starts this year. I'm pretty certain about that. You still have Davy Garcia there who, was considered one of the top pitching prospects for a long time. a lot of interesting names like Luis Medina, Luis Gil. So there's a lot of players. Albert Abreu, Domingo Acevedo. The list goes on and on. So they do have a lot of young arms that are going to make an impact, not only in the rotation, but in the bullpen as well.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing to consider here is obviously right now we don't know if Tanaka will make the opening day roster if depending on how his concussion symptoms go. Luis Cessa, you figure would be a no-go right now because it's going to take him a while to get over the coronavirus, and that's at least 2 openings right there. You think they're going to fill them with like some of these young kids? Because Domingo Germán is also not a factor. He still has that suspension to serve.
Yeah, the Domingo Germán factor is something that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about, but he would be right in there in the mix, even if everybody was healthy, at least in the bullpen. He would definitely be a weapon that the Yankees utilize. So he's somebody that they'll miss. As you said, Tanaka, Severino, both will be missing. But, they do have a lot of depth in the pitching rotation, both, that's going to be on the 30-man squad and, in the player pool. So as much as a question mark as it is, because Tanaka, how great of a pitcher he is. The thing with Severino, we kind of knew he was going to be gone for the whole season. So I don't really consider him as much of a loss, but I do think they'll be able to overcome what they have just by the players that are inside of their player pool.
Yeah, the player pool is nice, and obviously, I will say it was definitely interesting to see the intra-squad game on Yes last night because we're recording on Tuesday the 7th. I will say this is not something I ever thought I would see on TV. It just tells you the state of sports this year that we're all getting excited to watch the fake baseball game between two teams of players on the same squad.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience watching this game last night. On one hand, like I said before, watching Clark Schmidt go up against the Yankees A lineup that you'll be seeing, if they make it to the World Series, that's a lineup that could be out there. Minus maybe Tyler Wade and stuff, obviously, putting DJ LeMahieu, but he's going up against the cream of the crop, and seeing him do that was a great experience. But again, like you said, at the same time, 2 DHs in a lineup, no defensive players in the field was a little, weird to see, but in the grand scheme of things, I was just happy to see baseball back on my TV, and I'm looking forward to seeing that again tonight with Garrett Cole making his debut.
Yeah, that, and I guarantee you the exhibition games between the Mets and the Yankees in about a week and a half are going to be through the roof because people are going to be dying to see an actual competitive baseball game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Not to sidetrack a little bit, but I do have, some pretty high hopes for the Mets as well. So I know it's going to be an exhibition game, but, New York versus New York, there's always a little bit of, a little something more in those games. So it's going to be fun to see. And like we said before, I'll just echo his statement again. It's just great to see baseball. I'm happy to see it on my TV.
Yeah, and we also got the Yankee schedule last night. And one thing I saw that was intriguing is obviously, the back half for them looks extremely easy, but obviously you have to get to the back half first. Do you think they could be in more danger if they don't get out hot, considering the amount of good teams they play right out of the gate?
I don't want to say the Yankees specifically will be in more danger, but I do think it's going to be a race to the end for all teams. I don't think there's any team you can really count out of it. I mean, with such a short sample size, I heard a stat yesterday. Don't quote me because I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was like a 5-game losing streak equates to like an 18-game losing streak, and if it was across 162 game season, something like that. So you have to get out of the gate hot. You have to get out of the gate fast. Like you said, the second half of the season is definitely favorable on the Yankee side, but 60 games is really a coin toss. So it's going to be really interesting, not only for the Yankees, but for all teams involved.
Yeah, I think there's one team I'm willing to throw out, and I don't think, given the divisions they're playing, I do not see any way the Orioles will get in, barring every other team having major issues with people staying healthy. And that, I think we get there, we're not actually finishing the season. So I think it would be strange to see Baltimore going far.
Yeah, I would put Baltimore on that list. Maybe we'll say 29, 28 teams or so. That have a chance.
Yeah. It's basically I put them out, the Marlins out, made it Tigers. I think everybody else I could see, okay, maybe there's a path here.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting because, like we keep saying, it's 60 games. That's not a lot. Especially baseball players, it takes a long time for them to warm up. We've seen time and time again over the years how long it takes for teams to go from spring training to the regular season to kind of really get into form. So it's going to be interesting. And think about it this way. The Nationals last year, look at their first half of the season. They were awful, ended up winning the World Series. So it's really a crapshoot, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, because I remember also, this is not interesting for the individual players, too, because you have some guys, I remember Mark Teixeira was historically a slow starter for the Yankees. He would probably not be doing very good in a 60-game season. Curtis Granderson didn't used to get off the fast starts. Guys like that are going to have so much pressure because that's be basically on the ball from day one. Yeah,
exactly. And these guys are, important players to your lineup. I mean, that you could just echo that and replace those with any player on the Yankees team. Imagine, Luke Voigt and Aaron Hicks getting off the slow starts. Those are big pieces. And I know the Yankees are, could overcome that with the talent they have. But, any slow start from anybody is going to negatively affect the team. So I know I said this before, but I'm just really interested to see not only for the Yankees' perspective, just in general across baseball, how this goes.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this. One guy I think on the Yankees, you have all the depth they have, is very intriguing. Is Miguel Andujar because obviously he can play at third base. He's getting some work in the core outfield. I think they could work at first base if they wanted to. So like, if everybody's healthy, where do you think he gets his most playing time?
Well, you have to remember that Aaron Boone did say recently that he is definitely going to utilize this roster's depth to full advantage. So I do think Miguel Andujar is going to get a lot of time. Like you said, left field, third base. I don't know if they really like him at first base. I know they tried him. I know he can be an emergency option there, but I think between left field and third base, that's where he's going to be playing. He started at third base yesterday in the first sim game. Tonight he's going to be in the outfield. So I'm really interested to see how he does there in game time. I know, all accounts have said he's worked really hard at trying to diversify his defense. So I'm really interested. We know his bat can play at the major league level. Remember a couple of years ago, he was probably the most consistent hitter in that lineup. So he definitely deserves a spot in there. I know it's a loaded team, but the fact that they're going to use their depth to their advantage means that we're going to see a lot of Miguel Andujar, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think your dependable guys, the guys who you know are going to stay healthy. I think like your Brett Gardners, they're going to be very valuable this year because even with the short year, even with that, you take the virus out of it, a lot of these guys, have trouble staying healthy. And based on the history the Yankees have, he's a guy who plays all the time.
Yeah, and you never know with age and this layoff, and think of back in February, January, these guys were gearing up, ready to go for 162 games. Then it shuts completely down. Now they're trying to wind back up, and I'm not saying that they were not doing anything this whole time. They were just sitting on their couches, but it's definitely different. It's a different experience, and I'm really curious to see how it affects a player like Brett Gardner, who is older. I'm sure he has his certain workout plan and regimen that he goes through. So I'm really interested to see how it affects him.
Yeah, I also think the Yankees are well positioned for the short year because their bullpen is so strong, and we know that a lot of stars are not going to be like primed to go deep into games out of the gate. The fact they have so many guys who can come out of the bullpen and pitch well, and they can utilize guys like Jonathan Loaizaga to fill middle innings, and they can use Chad Green as an opener. I feel like they have so many outs; it's not even funny that they could do so well.
Yeah, we know the depth of their bullpen is something that the Yankees have really worked on for a while now. They've always loaded up their bullpen with depth, trying to ease the workload on their starters, especially now. We don't know how long these players are going to be stretched out in terms of starting pitchers and how long it's going to take them to get to full strength. That's another thing, another side conversation where I'm really interested in seeing how these starters, really are going to go, getting to full strength, and at what point of the season is that going to be, and how often they're going to have to use these relievers. So many questions with these 60 games. It's really interesting. That's why I keep thinking, I don't know really who has an advantage. I mean, you could say the Yankees, of course, do because of how loaded their roster is, and you could say that across baseball. Dodgers are another team. Astros, depending on how, they put their scandal behind them. We know their team's still loaded. So I'm really interested to see how they adjust, and all these teams, how they can work in these 60 games, and just how it ends up working out for them.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. Plus, the schedule is a little harder because now you trade the NL Central, where you're playing like a lot of teams that were not great. You get rid of all the AL Central games against the Royals and the Tigers, the bad teams in the American League. Now you add in the Braves, the Nationals, the Phillies, in addition to the Met games they already had. So that's going to make it a little harder.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting schedule. I like how they're doing it. Of course, it makes the most sense just kind of being within your region, so it's smart. But like you said, Phillies, Braves, Nationals, defending champs. I really do like the Mets a lot this year, especially with the DH involved. So there's going to be a lot of tough competition. That doesn't take away the Rays, who, they could give the Yankees a run for their money. The Red Sox will always be an issue. Even Toronto, they didn't play well last year, but they have a very young, strong team. So this division is definitely going to be tough for the Yankees.
Yeah, I want to talk about the division for a minute because I think personally, on my outsider's perspective, I think I fade the Red Sox a little bit because they don't have as much pitching. I think that could be an issue, especially with the shortened season. The bullpen for them is not great. I think I put a little more. Tampa, I think, is obviously going to be the big challenge. I would put more stock in Toronto. I think Toronto's offense could really just get super hot and make them a big threat over the next couple of months.
Yeah, Toronto. I mean, they're another team too where they're definitely working on that pitching rotation, but they do have a lot of young offensive talent. And like we said, talking about Brett Gardner being older and going through these regimens, they have a young team where they're ready. They could be ready to go at all time. So I'm really curious to see how it affects them, but definitely as a whole, just the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be somebody who they're going to be tough to overcome. Blue Jays, strong. Red Sox, there's always, it's always going to be back and forth, the Yankees and Red Sox. So definitely going to be strong AL East this year.
It'll be definitely a fun division. And before I let you go, I do want to ask you real quick, like, assuming I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing on this podcast, I'm going to keep on knocking on this wood to make sure we get to the baseball season, have things happen, and not have everything just go off the rails. Assuming we get there, and I think once they start, they will play through. I feel convinced that, like, once the season starts, the owners and the players will be motivated to finish it. Like, assuming we get there, what do you think the Yankee year looks like? Like, where do you think they end up?
You know what? As I keep saying, I hate to repeat myself. You know, it's going to be tough for all teams, but in the end, you got to go with the talent. And if anything less than I don't even want to say less than first place because that's kind of putting a lot of pressure on them. But it's just hard to see them not winning this division. They have too much talent, too much depth, and it just seems like everything's going to line up in the right way for the Yankees. So I really think it's going to be favorable. Now, you know, whether people will see this as a year where things don't count. You know, let's say they do happen to win the World Series. People may put an asterisk next to it or what have you. But they have to play the games that are in front of them. They have to play the season that's in front of them. And I think, like I said, between the depth, not only in their lineup and their pitching rotation and their bullpen, but their roster in general and this player pool, that whole entire depth, I just think it's going to be too much for them, for other teams to overcome and beat them.
Yeah, I would put them in the playoffs for sure. Like, once they get there, anything can happen, as we found out over the last few years. So, Dan, thanks all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people follow you on social media and keep up with some of the stuff you're up to?
Mike, thanks again. I always love coming on, so I appreciate you having me. And you could just follow me at Dan J. Federico on Twitter. And also just look out for my work at Bronx and Bushville. I'm starting to pick back up some things there, so look out for some more content coming soon.
All right, Dan, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, there you have it. That's Dan Federico talking New York Yankees baseball. Up next, we'll take a deeper dive into the Yankees. Go back to our conversation on July 1st. The Yankee Fan Forum with Anthony Sarbellini, Ian Sachs, Troy Moriello, right after this.